Ever watched your own face smile back at you from across the street, only to realize it's not your reflection, but your best friend wearing your life like a costume? No? Well, buckle in, because I did. And I made her pay for every stolen smile. My name is Morgan Vallen, and I used to think the creepiest thing you could find online was a jump scare video or a deepfake. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the real-life horror of having my own face stolen. This isn't metaphorical. This is surgical. Precise. Deliberate. The kind of psychological warfare that makes you question if you're even you anymore. It started small. Isn't that how all betrayals slip in? Tiny things. I met Lena Winters in college. Journalism majors. Roommates. Partners in crime. She was always intense. Brilliant, charming, a little too observant. She copied my essays, my jokes, even the way I styled my hair. I thought it was admiration. I thought it was flattery. I thought she loved me like a sister. But sisters don't book cosmetic surgery consultations using your old photos as reference. I didn't realize how deep her obsession ran until years later, when she showed up at my birthday party wearing the same emerald dress I had on, her lips lined just like mine, and her laugh echoing mine like a well-rehearsed performance. My husband, Ethan, didn't even notice. That's what sent chills down my spine. She had perfected me. My gait. My scent. My mannerisms. Even the faint scar I had on my chin? She asked her surgeon to add it. You might think I'd confront her. Shout. Cut her off. But no, I stayed silent. Because I knew something worse was coming. And when it did, I needed her to believe I was clueless. She started flirting with Ethan. Subtle at first, brushing his hand, complimenting his tie, showing up when I was busy. I saw every text. Every message. She was bold, but not smart enough to cover her tracks. What she didn't know was that I had installed tracking software on her phone. Every selfie she took? I saw it. Every plan she made to accidentally bump into him? I read it first. Then came the real punch in the gut. She applied for a credit card under my name. With my social security number. She got into my accounts, even stole a diamond necklace Ethan had gifted me and wore it in a selfie posing as me. That was when I stopped being scared and started planning revenge. I filed nothing. I reported nothing. I let her keep going. Because the bigger the crime, the heavier the fall, and Lena was digging her own grave with a diamond-studded shovel. 2 months later, she walked into a high-end boutique and used my identity to commit wire fraud. Security footage. Witnesses. Paper trail. Fingerprints. Everything pointed to me. And I let it. I even walked into the police station when they summoned Morgan Vallen and handed over my ID, calm, collected. That's not me, I said, sliding them a file with photos, voice memos, GPS logs, and yes, even the facial surgery consultation documents with her surgeon's notes. Goal, look identical to Morgan V. When they arrested her, she screamed at the cameras, I am Morgan. And that's when I knew, this wasn't about wanting to be me. She wanted to erase me. But she didn't know I had planned every step ahead. The real twist? I showed up at her trial. As a witness. Wearing the same dress she used in her fraudulent selfie. The jury couldn't even tell us apart. But I had one thing she didn't, the truth. I testified. Calmly. Meticulously. Played the recordings. Played her voice practicing my speech for a video pitch she tried to submit as me. The courtroom was silent. Her lawyer asked, how do we know you're the real Morgan? So I stood up. Walked to the judge. And pulled out my birth certificate, passport, and a live facial scan linked to my digital ID that confirmed my biometric signature. She cried. She screamed. She laughed. She stole my life, she shouted. I am her. The verdict? 8 years. Identity fraud. Financial fraud. Attempted impersonation. And now, she sits in a cell with my face. But the mugshot? That's not me. That's the face of someone who tried to become a nightmare and failed. So to anyone watching this, thinking you can copy someone's life and steal what isn't yours, remember, when you wear someone else's skin, don't be surprised when they peel it off in public. And to Lena? Keep my face warm in prison, darling. You'll be wearing it for a while. If you're watching this and you've ever had someone try to copy your life, steal your spotlight, or become you, tell me below where you're from and what you'd do. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel for more twisted truths just like this. They say the mirror never lies. But for weeks, every time I looked at my reflection, I wasn't sure who was staring back. Was it me? Or was it her? The morning after Lena's arrest, I stood in the bathroom, brushing my hair, but my mind wasn't in the room. I kept seeing her face twisted in panic as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. My face, crying. My smile, distorted into something feral. It was like watching a nightmare crawl out of my own skin. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. My voicemail picked up. I could hear her voice through the door. Raspy. Pleading. They've made a mistake. Morgan, please, tell them the truth. You know I didn't mean to hurt you. I was you. I was better at being you than you ever were. I deleted the message, but not before forwarding it to my lawyer. I'd like to say that was the end of it, that the arrest ended the nightmare. But oh no, Lena had already embedded herself like a virus. She'd taken job interviews as me. Sent flirtatious emails to Ethan while pretending to be me. She even posted videos on a private account, mimicking my mannerisms down to the exact phrasing I used in public speeches. Ethan still didn't get it. Not really. He was angry, sure. Disgusted. But confused, too. How could she fool people for this long, he asked over breakfast. Didn't anyone notice? I just looked at him. You didn't, I said quietly. He didn't have a response. I hadn't told him everything. Not yet. Like the night I found a key hidden under the doormat. Not my doormat, hers. When I used it, I found her apartment was a shrine. Not to God. Not to a celebrity. But to me. Photos of me printed from social media. Notes in her handwriting that said what would Morgan say, and practice walking with left foot first. She had an entire wall mapped out like a detective board, connecting my habits, my old hairstyles, my daily schedule. Like she was preparing to replace me. It hit me in waves. This wasn't just about fraud. It wasn't just about money. It was obsession. It was single white female taken to a surgical level. And it was still happening, even behind bars. 3 days later, my lawyer called. You're not going to believe this, he said. Lena's trying to plead insanity. She says she's suffering from dissociative identity disorder, and that you're the other identity. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She claims you are the split identity she created. That she is Morgan Vallon. And that the person living your life is the delusion. That's when I knew. She wasn't done. And neither was I. You want to know the craziest part? Her lawyer requested a psychological evaluation for me. And the court approved it, based on the uncanny resemblance and conflicting evidence. Her game was far from over. And now I had to play smarter. So I walked into that psych office with something she never saw coming, my backup plan. A hard drive. Password protected. Filled with hidden video recordings from years ago, when Lena first started copying me. Our conversations. Her practicing my voice. Her asking bizarre questions like, what perfume do you use when you're feeling powerful? And do you think Ethan would ever notice if you wore red lipstick instead of coral? I handed it over to the evaluator without a word. Let them watch it all. Because this time, I wasn't going to just prove who I was. I was going to erase who she thought she could become. And if Lena wanted a courtroom stage? Then I'd give her one she'd never forget. 3 weeks after Lena's arrest, I walked into my lawyer's office expecting silence. Calm. Closure, maybe. Instead, he tossed a file onto the table and said, "She's filed a restraining order. Against you." I stared at him. Laughed. Wait, me? He nodded, completely serious. Claims you've been stalking her, impersonating her identity, harassing her since college. My head was spinning. She had flipped the script so hard, I was starting to question my own timeline. She's using your name, your face, and she's accusing you of identity theft? I said. Not just that, he replied. She's accusing you of stealing her husband. Your husband. That was the moment I stopped laughing. Lena wasn't just obsessed. She was weaponizing that obsession. She wasn't delusional, she was strategic. She'd built this narrative long before she ever used my identity for fraud. She wanted to become me, and now, she wanted the world to believe I was the imposter. I asked to see her court declaration. It was chilling. I, Lena Winters, hereby state that Morgan Vallon, a former college roommate, has been stalking me for over a decade, copying my appearance, my social life, and attempting to replace me. I fear for my safety. She included photos, my photos. From my own life. From events she wasn't even invited to. Somehow she doctored them, overlaying timestamps, making it look like I was sneaking into her life. It was genius. And terrifying. My lawyer rubbed his temples. We're entering dangerous territory. This isn't just identity theft anymore. It's psychological warfare. And if the court believes her story just enough, it muddies everything. Makes your credibility look questionable. So I did the only thing I could do, I leaned harder into my plan. I gave the private investigator the green light to dig into Lena's entire medical history. Plastic surgeons, mental health records, childhood behavior. If she wanted to bring war, I'd bring the weapons. Meanwhile, Ethan? He was spiraling. People at his company started whispering. Did your wife go crazy? Which one is the real Morgan? A gossip blog even ran a headline, "Wife or Doppelganger? The bizarre double life of a Boston couple." I knew what Lena was doing. She was smearing me into gray. Blurring the edges until the court couldn't tell who was real and who was rehearsed. And then, the call came. From the jail. It was a video call. I don't know why I answered. Maybe I wanted to look her in the eyes and ask why. But what she said. Morgan, she purred, her hair tied back, wearing my signature navy blazer. You were always the better actress. But now? I've memorized your script. She leaned in close to the camera. I'm going to make them all believe you don't exist. Click. Call ended. I stared at the screen for 10 full minutes. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized something else. She wasn't doing this alone. Someone was helping her. There were things in that restraining order she couldn't have known. Conversations I had in private. Details from Ethan's office. My schedule. Someone inside was feeding her. And I was about to find out who. You ever have that crawling feeling? That itch at the back of your neck that tells you someone's been watching you for far too long? That's how I felt after Lena's call. Not just disturbed. Targeted. She knew too much. The kind of details no one outside this house should have known. And I mean no one. Which is exactly why I changed every password. Shut down the smart home devices. Ripped the Alexa out of the wall and dumped it in the trash. I even checked the smoke detectors for bugs, because when your face is being weaponized, you don't just get paranoid, you get surgical. But the real break came when I remembered something Ethan said in passing weeks ago. We were standing in the kitchen. He had mentioned that Lena had once asked him for my old journals for that book she was writing. I'd laughed it off then. Thought he was joking. But that night, I went into the attic, where my journals were supposed to be. Dozens of notebooks from college till now. Documenting everything. My thoughts. My dreams. My pain. My process. Gone. Every single one. I walked downstairs like a ghost. My hands shaking. My heart not even beating the same anymore. And when Ethan came home late that night, I was waiting. Where are my journals? He looked confused at first. Then guilty. I let her borrow one or two, back when you two were close. I didn't think, Morgan, I didn't know you didn't think? I snapped. You gave her my voice. You gave her my entire self, on paper. He tried to apologize, but I wasn't listening. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The messages she sent. The way she mirrored my behavior so perfectly. My journals were her blueprint. She had been studying me like a role. And Ethan, sweet, clueless Ethan, had handed her the script. But that still didn't explain the most recent leak. The exact timings of my therapy sessions. The text I sent to my assistant that somehow ended up in Lena's fabricated emails. No. This went deeper. Someone was leaking real-time information. So I did something drastic. I printed out fake emails. I scheduled a secret lunch meeting with an imaginary lawyer. Then I waited. 2 days later, I got a call. From the jail nurse. Just letting you know Lena's been placed in isolation. She had a breakdown. Kept shouting about some new evidence Morgan was planning to bring. Does that make sense to you? Yes. Yes, it did. My trap had worked. She knew about the fake meeting. Which meant someone had told her. I checked my phone's call logs. Reviewed every outgoing email from my laptop. Nothing. My security cameras showed no visitors. Then it hit me. The housekeeper. Mara. She'd been with us 3 years. Sweet. Quiet. Too quiet. She had access to every room. Every drawer. Every conversation. She was there the night I burned a stack of Lena's old letters. She was there when I first confided in Ethan that I suspected Lena had broken into our home, months before the fraud arrest. I remembered her picking up my phone once when it rang during laundry. I thought nothing of it. But now? Now I realized that phone could have been cloned in seconds. So I did what I had to do. I confronted her. She denied it at first. Swore she was loyal. Cried. But when I told her I'd placed a tracker in the journal she returned to me just last week, her face changed. You don't understand, she whispered. She said she'd become you anyway. She just wanted to speed it up. I was only trying to help her get what she deserved. What she deserved? I asked. She said, you took everything from her. Her life. Her identity. Her mother. I froze. Her mother? That was a twist I never saw coming. Because Lena's mother was dead. Or so I thought. But now? Now I wasn't sure who anyone really was. The phrase "I think you killed my mother" kept echoing in my ears like a fever dream. After Mara's confession, I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the hallway floor with every box of photo albums, old letters, and yearbooks I could find. I needed answers. Needed context. Needed to know what the hell Lena was talking about. I pulled out our college yearbook first. Junior year. The year I met Lena. Flipping through it felt like looking at a crime scene in reverse. Her smile was softer back then. Less practiced. I was listed as editor-in-chief, and she? Contributing columnist. We'd written so many essays side by side, but one thing jumped out at me: she never submitted her photo for the staff page. I didn't think much of it back then. But now I knew better. I flipped to the alumni update section. Birth names. Parent names. And then I saw it: Lena Winters, formerly Lena Martin. Martin? That name burned into my brain like acid. I hadn't heard it in decades. But I knew it. From somewhere deep, hidden, intentionally forgotten. I went straight to my attic the next morning. Opened a small cedar box that smelled like dust and lavender. Inside were old letters from professors, and a sealed envelope addressed to me from Professor Beatrice Martin. I remembered her. My favorite creative writing instructor. She had mentored me. Believed in me. She even wrote my recommendation to Columbia. She was the kind of woman who wore long scarves and drank too much chamomile tea, always calling me bright like morning. But then, she vanished. Mid-semester. Rumor was she had a breakdown, left the school, and died in a car accident months later. I cried for weeks. But the letter in my attic? It was never opened. My hands trembled as I broke the seal and unfolded it. The ink was shaky. Dated 2 weeks before her disappearance. Morgan, I want you to be careful. I know your success is drawing attention, and not all of it is good. I've seen how she looks at you. There's more I need to tell you, but I can't write it here. If something happens to me, look beyond the smiles. Not everyone who praises you wishes you well. There was no signature. Just a faint smear, like the pen had dragged across the page. And suddenly it hit me. Lena Martin was her daughter. It all made sense: the fixation, the mimicry, the obsession. But it wasn't admiration. It wasn't even envy. It was vengeance. She blamed me for her mother's breakdown. Maybe even for her death. I needed more. So I hired a genealogical investigator. Asked him to find any record of Beatrice Martin's death. What he came back with was a punch to the gut: no official death certificate. No burial record. No obituary. But there was a psychiatric clinic in Vermont. Closed down now. But back then? It housed women under assumed names for psychological rehabilitation. One of those names? Beatrice Moore. Martin. A cover-up. I couldn't breathe. Beatrice hadn't died. She'd been locked away. And Lena had grown up believing I caused it. No wonder she hated me. No wonder she wanted my life. To become me. Destroy me. Because in her mind, I already did that to her. But what she didn't know was the truth. Because I never did anything to her mother. But someone else did. Someone she trusted. And I was about to find out who. I drove to Vermont that morning with one goal: find the records from the now-defunct psychiatric clinic that once housed Professor Beatrice Martin, Lena's mother. I needed facts. I needed names. I needed to understand what happened the year she disappeared from campus and why Lena blamed me. The clinic was long gone. Condemned. Windows shattered, vines curling around rusted doorframes like nature trying to erase what was once hidden inside. But I didn't need the building. I needed the archive center across the street, the one that kept old patient logs under lock and request. It took paperwork. I had to prove I was doing a journalistic piece on historical mental health care in women's institutions. I even showed them my old university credentials. And finally, they brought me a folder. Yellowed edges. Bound in a blue string. Patient name: Beatrice Moore, admitted, October 1997. Diagnosis: acute stress-induced psychosis. Referring physician, Dr. Alan Prescott. I froze. Dr. Prescott was our university's head of department. He was my advisor. A man I'd once trusted with my final thesis. And apparently, he was the one who had Beatrice committed. That's when the memories started to surface. The way Dr. Prescott would cut Beatrice off in meetings. How he'd always downplay her lectures. I remember once overhearing them argue in the hallway, him telling her she was getting too emotionally involved with students. At the time, I thought it was about me. She'd been mentoring me so closely. Helping me prep my writing portfolio. She even gave me a private recommendation, bypassing departmental approval. Prescott had hated that. I remember him scolding me once, saying, "Don't let Beatrice fill your head with fantasies. You're not special just because someone pets your ego." But the worst part? There was a second document in the file. A letter written by Beatrice from inside the clinic, never mailed. Marked return to sender. Alan did this. He's threatened to expose me if I keep mentoring Morgan. He's afraid she'll outshine the department's golden boys. He says I've been inappropriate. He's trying to make me look unstable. Please, if anyone finds this, tell Lena the truth. Tell her I didn't abandon her. I was silenced. I didn't know I was crying until I tasted salt. This wasn't my fault. Beatrice was destroyed by him. And Lena? She'd grown up thinking I was the snake in the story, when really, we were both victims of the same predator. I went home with copies of everything. And as I sat in my living room, scanning the pages again, I realized something else: Prescott never faced consequences. He retired 2 years later with honors. He still gave public lectures. Still published essays on nurturing academic potential. I opened my laptop and Googled him. There he was. Still active. Still smiling. Still poisoning minds. And suddenly? My focus shifted. Yes, Lena tried to steal my life. Yes, she committed crimes. But she'd been shaped by lies. By trauma. By abandonment that wasn't real. I didn't feel sympathy. But I felt clarity. To win this war, I had to expose all of it. So I began planning. Not just to destroy Lena's legal case, but to destroy the man who started this story 27 years ago. Dr. Alan Prescott. And I knew exactly how I'd do it. He looked exactly the same. That was the first punch to the gut. Dr. Alan Prescott, retired now, but still lecturing part-time at alumni seminars. Salt and pepper beard trimmed like a Roman senator. Gold cufflinks. That smug, paternal tone like he owned every truth in the room. I booked a spot at one of his mentorship and legacy lectures under a fake name. When I approached him after the session, he didn't recognize me at first. "Dr. Prescott," I said, extending my hand. "I'm Morgan. Morgan Taylor. I was class of '99. I used to audit Professor Beatrice Martin's classes." His smile faltered for half a second. Barely noticeable, but there. A flicker in the polished veneer. "Ah, Beatrice," he said. "Tragic what happened to her." "Tragic?" I echoed. "You mean how she disappeared overnight and ended up in a psychiatric clinic under a new name?" He blinked. Silence. Then the smile returned, cooler now. "I'm afraid you've been reading internet gossip, Ms. Taylor." "No," I said calmly. "I've been reading her patient files. And the letter she wrote blaming you for everything." His jaw tightened. "Ah. So you've come to settle someone else's score?" "No," I replied. "I've come to expose yours." And then I slid a folder across the table. Inside, copies of Beatrice's admittance forms, the letter, even his own signature authorizing the referral. He didn't touch it. But he didn't need to. I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. You have no idea what that woman was capable of, he said, voice low. She became unstable. Paranoid. She was crossing lines with students. Obsessive, even. I had no choice. No choice but to destroy her career because she believed in someone more than you did? I shot back. No choice but to silence her because you couldn't control her intellect or her influence. His mouth twitched. You're not recording this, are you? He asked. No, I said. But I don't need to. Because the next step? That didn't involve his voice. It involved his victims. I already had 2 former students lined up, women who had contacted me after I posted a vague alumni inquiry. They said Prescott had undermined their projects, blocked their research funding, and in one case, made uncomfortable advances. This wasn't going to be a scandal. It was going to be a collapse. As I stood up to leave, I looked him in the eyes and said, "You thought you buried her. But you planted something instead. And I'm the harvest, Alan." Outside the auditorium, I breathed in the sharp Boston air. It smelled like dust, old books, and karma. But I wasn't done. Because while I was digging into Prescott's past, I got an email. From an anonymous burner account. Subject line, "You want more dirt on Lena? Meet me." Location, a cafe near the courthouse. Time, tomorrow. Noon. And attached? A single photo. Of Lena. Dressed in prison scrubs. But not alone. She was holding hands with someone. Someone I recognized. And that changes everything. The cafe was quiet. Too quiet. I sat with my back against the wall, just like I'd learned in self-defense class, watching every entrance, every reflection in the windows. I'd come alone, no lawyer, no backup, because whoever sent that photo knew something I didn't. And that photo? Was real. Lena, in prison scrubs, smiling sweetly, holding hands with Assistant Warden Trevor Lane. The same man I'd met briefly during the restraining order hearing. He was polite, mid-40s, kept a tight jaw and tighter records. But now? He looked smitten. And Lena? She looked victorious. At exactly 12:02, a man slid into the booth across from me. Late 20s. Nervous. Hoodie pulled low, smelling faintly of smoke and printer ink. "You're Morgan," he whispered. "Depends on who's asking," I said without blinking. He smirked, but it faded fast. "I worked IT support at the facility until last month. They let me go when I reported something strange, something about inmate messaging logs. I was flagged for accessing restricted data, but all I did was follow a file trail." I leaned in. "What trail?" He pulled out a USB and slid it under his coffee sleeve. "Lena's messages are being routed through a fake educational program in the prison database. It's how she communicates outside, under an alias. But here's the kicker, she's not doing it alone. The assistant warden created the login for her. He's in love with her. I think he believes she's innocent." I didn't respond. Not yet. Because suddenly, the pieces were clicking together too fast for comfort. The court delays. The mysteriously missing video testimony I'd submitted. The judge who suddenly recused herself and was replaced with a newer, more open-minded one. She wasn't just seducing someone in prison. She was seducing the system. I took the USB, slipped it into my pocket, and asked one more question. "Why are you telling me this?" He looked at me, really looked at me. "Because she's planning something big. She's filing a formal appeal, and I think she's trying to switch places with you." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Like, legally?" "No," he said. "Literally." Apparently, Lena had been using her stolen identity to build a case that I was the imposter, the unstable one, that I had assumed her life after a psychotic break. She was claiming I orchestrated her imprisonment. That I'd fabricated everything. Her lawyers had even subpoenaed footage of me entering the police station, and were planning to use facial analysis tech to prove I was the mimic. It was absurd. But also terrifying. Because with enough corrupted hands and manipulated data, absurd becomes possible. The IT guy left, but not before scribbling a burner phone number on my napkin. "Use it if you need me," he said. "But be careful. If she knows you're catching on." I didn't need him to finish. That night, I stayed awake reading every message on that drive. Every manipulated email chain. Every video Lena had sent from inside the prison's education terminal, posing as me, lecturing about identity trauma, begging for help, saying she was locked away by someone who stole her life. It was convincing. Too convincing. She was trying to paint me as the copy. Not just to the court, but to the world. So I picked up my phone and called the one person I didn't want to. Ethan. He picked up on the second ring. "I need you to do something for me," I said. "What is it?" I swallowed. "I need you to testify. In court. That I'm the real Morgan Vallon." Silence. And then, his answer? "Morgan. I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure anymore." That sentence rang in my ears long after the call ended. Not "I don't want to get involved." Not "I'm confused." But "I'm not sure if you're you." It felt like betrayal, but worse. It felt like a deletion. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized. Lena's plan was working. Ethan had always been logical, a data guy. He relied on facts, not emotion. And Lena had been feeding him manipulated evidence for months. Text messages from me that I never sent. Photos of her wearing my clothes, in our home, taken during the times he claimed he was too busy to notice. She had laid the foundation carefully, methodically. And now? Even my own husband couldn't tell me apart from the woman who stole my face. I couldn't cry. I didn't have the time. I had to fight. The next day, I went to see him. In person. I didn't call. I didn't warn him. He opened the door, hesitant, his expression torn somewhere between guilt and suspicion. "Morgan," I pushed past him into the living room, where everything looked exactly the same, except for one thing. On the mantel above the fireplace was a framed photo. Of me. But not me. Lena. Wearing my red cashmere sweater. My smile. Holding Ethan's hand at some public event after her arrest. "How long has this been here?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. It burned. He didn't answer. Instead, he said something that broke me. "She said you planted the fraud to punish her. That you were jealous of how much time we spent reconnecting after the book project. She told me she was your half-sister. That you hated her from childhood." Half-sister. Half-sister. I could barely breathe. "She said what?" I choked out. "She showed me a DNA test," he said softly. "It matched with one you submitted to Ancestry years ago. Your file was public. She created a second account and showed we had a 49% match." I took a step back. Of course she did. She knew about my family history. Knew my father had a child from another relationship. I'd told her that in college. It was a drunk conversation on the dorm stairs. She'd stored it all this time and weaponized it. "She's not my sister," I snapped. "She's your stalker. And mine. She had surgery to look like me. You know that. You saw the documents." He ran a hand through his hair. "I did. But you don't understand, Morgan, her behavior in court? It's convincing. She talks like you. She remembers things only you and I should know. Because I told her, I thought. Because I made the mistake of letting her in." I handed him a sealed envelope. What's this? He asked. Proof, I said. Of what she really is. Inside, a forensic report on facial mapping that showed minute differences between my bone structure and Lena's. Audio analysis from a voice expert, confirming subtle but distinct differences in cadence and breath patterns. The digital logs of her prison messages, impersonating me while claiming I'd stolen her life. And finally, the photo of her holding hands with the assistant warden. He stared at the papers. Then looked up. I didn't know. I was shaking now, not from fear, but from rage. You didn't want to know. You liked the idea of having two women obsessed with you, didn't you? You liked the attention, the confusion. You liked playing the center of the storm. His silence told me I was right. I turned to leave, but stopped at the door. You're going to testify, I said. Not because I need your belief anymore. But because when this explodes publicly, and you'll want the world to know you picked the right side. Even if it took you too long. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. Voicemail. I played it. Lena's voice, dripping with venom and honey. You can't win, Morgan. You keep forgetting. I know how to be you better than you ever did. And Ethan? He looked more at me in 1 week than he did at you in 10 years. She laughed. Cold. Controlled. See you in court, sis. Court was supposed to feel like justice. Like clarity. But that morning? When I stepped into the courtroom and saw her standing there, free, smiling like a saint in my clothes, I realized something far more dangerous. This wasn't a legal battle anymore. This was theater. And Lena? She'd memorized every act. She wore my ivory blazer. My nude pumps. Even my subtle coral lipstick, the exact shade I'd worn during my TEDx talk 5 years ago. It was like staring into a mirror possessed by something unholy. The only thing she didn't copy was the slight scar behind my left ear, the one I'd had since childhood, from falling off my bike. But you'd only see it if you knew to look. She leaned in as I passed, whispering through a fake smile. May the real Morgan Vallon please stand up. I didn't flinch. I wouldn't give her that. Her new lawyer was young. Charismatic. Bought, no doubt, with the help of Trevor Lane, the prison officer she'd seduced. He sat in the second row of the gallery, adjusting his tie nervously, eyes never leaving her face. Or rather, my face. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Law students. Curious onlookers who had heard about the identity twins case. The air buzzed with something between fascination and disbelief. The judge, a woman named Harper, read through the case file slowly. When she looked up, her eyes darted between us. I could tell. She wasn't sure who was who. Let's begin with testimony from the petitioner, she said. Lena walked confidently to the stand. I watched her inhale slowly before beginning. Calm. Fluid. Her tone laced with faux vulnerability. I've been locked away for almost a year, she said softly. Watching someone else live my life. My friends, my memories, even my husband. Taken. Rewritten. I was silenced. Her voice cracked at just the right moment. I know it sounds unbelievable. But trauma often does. I was afraid to speak. Afraid no one would believe me. But the woman sitting across from me? That's not Morgan. That's a woman who took my face and used it to erase me. She reached into a folder and handed her lawyer something. A journal. My journal. One of the ones Ethan had loaned her years ago. She had it highlighted. Annotated. This is my writing, she said. My thoughts. And I remember every word. Then she quoted an entire paragraph I wrote about feeling unseen in my marriage. Word for word. The room went quiet. Even Ethan looked uncomfortable. Her lawyer stood. Your Honor, we will provide handwriting analysis, DNA evidence showing a partial sibling match, and behavioral evaluations conducted by a forensic psychiatrist who believes my client displays signs of identity trauma consistent with being replaced. Replaced. They were flipping the whole story. And then came the twist I didn't see coming, her secret witness. They called my former therapist, Dr. Lynn Norwood. I felt my heart slam into my stomach. She took the stand and, without even looking at me, said, I treated the woman who sits here today claiming to be Morgan Vallon. But in our sessions, she frequently expressed paranoia, hallucinations, belief that someone was trying to become her. She turned and looked at me. Not Lena. Me. She told me someone was copying her, watching her, that her best friend had taken her identity. At the time, I believed it to be trauma-driven delusion. But now, I'm not sure. I wanted to scream. But I stayed silent. Because I had to. Because my proof hadn't arrived yet. But it was coming. A man in the back row stood quietly, made brief eye contact with me, and gave a slow nod. The forensic specialist I'd hired. He had something Lena didn't know about. Something even I hadn't known until recently. A set of security camera recordings from the day she used my face to commit fraud, captured from a hidden angle Lena hadn't accounted for. With clear audio. And a witness who had never been contacted. But that would be for tomorrow. Today? I let her shine. Let her build her fantasy higher and higher. Because the higher you climb, the louder it sounds when you fall. The next day, I walked into the courtroom not as a victim, but as a weapon. Everyone stared. Because let's be honest, two women with identical faces entering a courtroom to battle over a stolen identity? It was viral bait. But what they didn't know was that I came armed. Not with emotion, but with truth. Call your witness, Judge Harper said. My lawyer stood. Calm. Crisp. The defense calls Morgan Vallon to the stand. I walked up slowly. Let them all see me. The real Morgan. The one who didn't need a performance. Just facts. After the oath, my lawyer began. Morgan, can you tell the court how long you've known Lena Winters? I nodded. Since college. She was my roommate. My friend. My shadow. And when did you begin to suspect she was imitating you? I gave the court a timeline. The stolen journals. The copied outfits. The matching laugh. But I didn't give them melodrama. I gave them documentation. Dates. Evidence. Then my lawyer smiled and said, May I approach the bench? She handed Judge Harper a sealed envelope. Inside? A notarized letter from the voice coach Lena hired, a woman named Sasha Dahlin, who I'd found through payment tracking software on Lena's old Venmo account. Sasha had no idea she was helping a stalker. She thought Lena was prepping for a documentary acting role. Her statement read, Lena Winters requested sessions to mirror another woman's voice for an experimental identity project. She brought videos, journals, and even emotion drills. I believed it was for a role. I now realize it was part of an impersonation attempt. The courtroom murmured. But that wasn't all. Your Honor, my lawyer continued, we'd also like to present testimony from a courthouse janitor. One who saw the petitioner, Lena, removing something from behind her ear in the restroom before trial. They called him in. A humble man. Nervous. But honest. I saw her peel off. I dunno, like a little patch thing, he said. She was muttering about how it wasn't sticking right. It looked like fake skin. Lena's lawyer objected. Hearsay. But we had footage. From the hallway security cam. The judge allowed it. They played it on the screen. Lena exiting the restroom, pressing the side of her jaw, adjusting something. In fast motion, it looked minor. But when paused, you could see the crease, a subtle outline from a silicone patch where a scar would be. My client, I said calmly, has a natural scar behind her left ear. I was injured when I was 6. It was documented in my pediatric files. Lena has none. But for this trial, she created one. Then I pulled my hair back. May I approach the judge? Judge Harper nodded. I stepped forward, leaned down, and lifted my hair. The scar, still faint but visible, was right there. My lawyer handed over my childhood medical report. Dated. Signed. Hospital stamped. Silence filled the courtroom. But we weren't done. Lastly, Your Honor, my lawyer said, we'd like to submit Exhibit F. A video recording, silent at first, then playing audio of Lena in a hotel room, practicing lines from my keynote speech in front of a mirror. We're all just looking for a place to be seen, she whispered. To be known. To be remembered. She rehearsed it 3 times. She even practiced blinking like me. And that was the moment the courtroom shifted. Not with outrage, but recognition. The judge leaned back. Do you have anything else, Ms. Vallon? I nodded. Looked directly at Lena. I have this, I said. And I opened a small jewelry box I brought with me. Inside? The original engagement ring Ethan had given me. The one Lena claimed I'd stolen. I turned it over and showed the inscription inside the band. To Morgan, my only home. I placed it on the evidence table. I never gave this to anyone, I said. And I never will. Lena stared, wide-eyed. Because she didn't know it was engraved. She never checked. And in that moment, everyone in the room knew who the real Morgan Vallon was. The courtroom buzzed after I finished my testimony. For the first time, Lena looked shaken. Her lips twitched as she pressed a hand over her fake scar. But her lawyer? He didn't flinch. In fact, he looked energized. Like he'd been waiting for me to land my best punches so he could deliver his knockout. He stood and approached the bench. Your Honor, he said, the petitioner would like to introduce a new witness. One the defense hasn't seen, because his testimony was sealed in connection to a protected psychiatric file. My lawyer immediately objected. Surprise witnesses with sealed psychiatric involvement violate disclosure protocols. But Judge Harper, intrigued and tired of the circus, allowed it, with a warning that anything irrelevant would be struck from the record. The courtroom doors opened. And in walked a man with thin glasses, gray hair slicked back, and a slow, rehearsed smile. Dr. Malcolm Swain. A name I hadn't heard in years. But when I did, my stomach dropped. He was the psychiatrist who used to treat Lena's mother, Professor Beatrice Martin, when she was institutionalized under the name Beatrice Moore. He had been in the files. A ghost I thought I'd never meet in person. He was sworn in. And then Lena's lawyer pounced. Dr. Swain, would you tell the court why Professor Moore, also known as Beatrice Martin, was committed in the first place? Swain nodded solemnly. Professor Martin suffered a severe psychiatric break. She was convinced that one of her students, Ms. Morgan Vallon, was being targeted by faculty, and claimed a conspiracy to derail her career. She became obsessed. She kept detailed notes on Morgan's grades, behavior, even dreams. My heart raced. The courtroom stared. She accused faculty of trying to erase Morgan. Of controlling her. At first, we thought it was simple paranoia, but it escalated into violent outbursts and eventually, a suicide attempt. I gripped the edge of my seat. Are you saying, Lena's lawyer asked, that the obsession her mother had with Morgan may have been passed to her daughter? Swain paused. I'm saying the fixation on Morgan Vallon runs deep. Deeper than either woman may realize. He turned to the judge. Lena Winters grew up believing her mother was destroyed by the woman sitting in this courtroom. And in the mind of a child who lost everything, home, parent, identity, it's possible she created a reality where reclaiming that life became survival. The implication was clear. Lena wasn't impersonating me out of malice. She was reclaiming a stolen legacy. And somehow, that almost worked. Until my lawyer stood. Dr. Swain, were you aware that Professor Martin wrote a letter, now in evidence, that accused not Morgan Vallen, but Dr. Alan Prescott of orchestrating her institutionalization? Swain hesitated. I was not shown that letter. Then allow us, my lawyer said, handing it to the clerk. Swain read it. Slowly. As murmurs broke out in the courtroom. Then, almost reluctantly, he looked up. If this is authentic, and I believe it is, then Professor Martin may have been telling the truth. Lena's lawyer jumped in. But that doesn't negate her diagnosis, no, Swain interrupted. But it changes the cause of the breakdown. If she was silenced and not delusional, then her daughter's actions take on a different light. Judge Harper banged the gavel. We will recess for 1 hour. Then continue with closing arguments. Lena shot me a glare as we stood. Her calm was cracking. And as I walked past her, I whispered, the story your mother was silenced for? I'm going to finish it. Because now I knew, this wasn't just about proving I was me. It was about clearing her mother's name. And in doing that, I'd take both of them down. Court wasn't just a courtroom anymore. By day 3, it had become a theater. A feeding ground. A live-streamed national headline. Twin faces. One life. Who's the real Morgan Vallen? Prison love triangle and identity war, what the hell is happening in Boston? Social media lit up with memes. Side-by-side comparisons. Opinion polls. Hashtag Real Morgan was trending on X. But the worst part? Lena was winning hearts. She had turned victimhood into performance art. And her next move? Was designed to make me look like the villain. It happened after recess. Lena's lawyer stood with that smug, courtroom swagger and said, Your Honor, we have one final piece of evidence. A video file. Found on a hard drive retrieved from a storage unit belonging to Ms. Vallen. That was a lie. It wasn't from my unit. It was planted. They played it on the screen. A video of me, yes, my face, my voice, sitting on my old college bed, saying things like, she always wanted to be me. And if she tries hard enough, maybe she can. Maybe it's better that way. It was choppy. Grainy. My tone robotic in places. But it was me. Sort of. I gripped my lawyer's sleeve. That's a deepfake, I whispered. I've never said that. But the judge's brow had furrowed. The courtroom gasped. Lena sat there looking shocked, but just enough. Like, oh, I didn't want to do this, but I had to. The video ended. The silence was brutal. Your Honor, her lawyer said smoothly, this video demonstrates that even Ms. Vallen questioned her own identity. That perhaps she was complicit. Or fractured. Or both. My lawyer stood. Unshaken. We'd like to respond, immediately. Judge Harper nodded. We plugged in our laptop. Played my video. The original. Same outfit. Same setting. But this time? The full footage. Unedited. Me sitting on my dorm bed for a class project in senior year, reading a monologue I'd written for a screenwriting class. A satire piece titled The Clone. The full context? She always wanted to be me. And if she tries hard enough, maybe she can. Maybe it's better that way, because I'll finally be free of the burden of perfection. Let her try. Let her break. Let her learn, no one wants to carry someone else's skin forever. We paused it. My lawyer turned to the judge. This was a fictional piece, submitted as part of a university portfolio. We have the time-stamped submission, the professor's comments, and the full recording on the university server. Then she played both videos side by side. The courtroom stared. You could see the cuts, the audio splices, the deliberate warping of context. A full creative project, twisted into a weapon. Judge Harper leaned forward. Is it your claim, Ms. Winters, that you believed this was a confession? Lena opened her mouth, then closed it. Because now? Lying looked too obvious. And that's when the final card hit the table. We called the digital forensics expert to the stand. He confirmed it. This video was altered. The file's metadata shows it was manipulated 7 months ago, right after Lena Winters gained access to a computer via the prison education program. The file was renamed real_Morgan_confess_final2. MOV. The court erupted. Lena's lawyer tried to object. Tried to claim there was no proof Lena did the edit. But it didn't matter. Because the jury heard the difference. Saw the difference. And now? Believed the difference. Judge Harper banged her gavel hard. We will recess until morning. Closing arguments tomorrow. Lena stood slowly. But this time? She didn't look smug. She looked afraid. And as I packed up my things, I walked by her and whispered the one line she'd twisted. No one wants to carry someone else's skin forever, Lena. And tomorrow? You're going to feel it peel. The courtroom was buzzing before the judge even entered. Today was supposed to be the final day, closing arguments, jury deliberation. But 10 minutes before proceedings began, my lawyer leaned over and whispered, "There's someone outside asking to speak. She says her name is Beatrice Martin." My heart stopped. I thought she was. I know, my lawyer said. But she's not. And she's here. With proof. We both stood and walked into the hallway. And there she was. Frail. Thin. But unmistakable. Beatrice Martin. My former mentor. Lena's mother. The woman whose disappearance fueled the fire that nearly consumed my life. She looked at me with soft, watery eyes. I never blamed you, Morgan, she said. Her voice was quiet. Older. But steady. Not once. But she did. And I think it's time I told everyone why. She had come from a long-term care home in Vermont. She'd never legally died, but she had disappeared, under the name Beatrice Moore. She'd lived quietly after leaving the institution. No contact with Lena. No contact with anyone. Just faded into silence, until the media storm surrounding Lena's trial pulled her back. Beatrice asked to speak. We filed a motion for a surprise witness. Lena's lawyer fought it hard. But Judge Harper looked at Beatrice from the bench and said, "Let her speak." Just once. Beatrice walked, slowly, to the stand. She had a cane. But her spine was straight. "I'm Beatrice Martin," she began, her voice soft but unwavering. "I taught literature at Hallwell University. I mentored both these women. One as a student. The other, as a daughter." Lena's face froze. Beatrice took a deep breath. "I was committed not because I was unstable, but because I refused to be silent. I accused my department chair, Dr. Alan Prescott, of academic sabotage, harassment, and unethical treatment of female students. When I defended Morgan's scholarship, when I pushed for her to receive an independent fellowship, he retaliated." She paused, eyes wet. "I tried to tell people. I wrote letters. I begged for hearings. Instead, I was diagnosed, medicated, and locked away in a place where people don't come back from. My daughter was never told the truth. She was led to believe I abandoned her. That I died. She turned to Lena. I didn't die, Lena. I was erased. Lena's lips quivered. I blamed Morgan too, in those early years. I thought maybe I had crossed lines. Cared too much. Seen too much of myself in her. But now? Now I know that the real crime was silence. The courtroom was silent. My heart thundered. Beatrice reached into her coat and pulled out a yellowed envelope. My journals. From before and during my institutionalization. I wrote them in case I was ever hurt again. She handed them to the judge. And then, she looked directly at her daughter. I'm sorry I wasn't there. But vengeance is not healing. You've become someone I don't recognize. You didn't defend me. You weaponized me. Lena's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Beatrice sat back. Weary. Finished. The judge dismissed her gently. Like a relic made of truth. And then? We rested our case. The jury was dismissed to deliberate. Lena didn't look at me as they walked out. She stared at the floor. Like a child who had finally run out of excuses. The jury returned in less than 4 hours. That's fast. Too fast. I sat frozen beside my lawyer, eyes locked on the foreperson, a middle-aged woman with careful posture and an unreadable face. Lena didn't move. She just stared forward, hands folded neatly in her lap, like she was preparing for a wedding vow, not a verdict. The clerk asked the standard question. Has the jury reached a unanimous decision? We have, Your Honor. She passed the paper to the judge. Judge Harper unfolded it. Read it. Then looked up. In the matter of identity theft, fraud, impersonation, and malicious defamation, we, the jury, find the defendant, Lena Winters, guilty on all counts. Gasps. Reporters scribbled like mad. The bailiff moved toward Lena, but she didn't flinch. She simply turned her head and smiled at me. Not the fake smile. Not the scared one. No. She smiled like a woman who still had a secret. As they cuffed her, Judge Harper spoke again. Sentencing hearing will be scheduled next week. Until then, Ms. Winters will be transferred to Massachusetts Correctional Facility. Court adjourned. Everyone exhaled. Except me. Because something about her calmness, it didn't sit right. On the way out, my lawyer grabbed my arm. You did it, she said, gently. No, I replied, my voice low. She did something. I just don't know what yet. That night, I didn't sleep. And at 2:47 a.m., the email arrived. From an encrypted account with no traceable IP. Subject line, check her left palm. Attached, a blurry but recent photo. Lena. Smiling in a prison jumpsuit, her hand lifted against the glass of a visitation booth. Written in pen on her palm, Valen 2-0 is out there. I sat back, chills racing across my spine. Whoever took that photo? Had visited her recently. And what she meant was terrifying. She wasn't working alone. The video deepfakes. The forged documents. The court infiltration. None of it had been possible without help. And now she was hinting there was someone else, maybe more than one, still out there, still pretending to be me. Or worse, becoming someone else entirely. My phone buzzed again. Unknown caller. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice, calm, smug, spilled into my ear seconds later. You won the trial, Morgan. But the mirror you broke? It had cracks in other places. You only ever saw one of me. But there are more. You forgot how many times I practiced becoming you, in front of someone else. Click. I stood in the middle of my dark kitchen, barefoot, stunned. And then I realized, Lena had been training someone else. maybe even multiple people. I ran to my computer. Searched for my name. My photos. And there it was. A blog post written under my name. With my photo. Published yesterday. I didn't write it. And I sure as hell didn't approve it. The blog post was clean. Professional. Sharp enough to fool anyone. Title: The Strength to Start Over, Morgan Wallen on Healing, Forgiveness, and Becoming Whole Again. My photo. My name. Even my tone. But I didn't write a word of it. There was a quote at the top: after pain comes peace, but only if we allow ourselves to evolve. It sounded like something I might say. It sounded exactly like me. Except it wasn't. The byline linked to a new website, www.morganwallenofficial.com. I clicked it. And nearly fell off my chair. There I was, again. My face, posing with books. My name. A calendar of upcoming podcast appearances. Even a video interview teaser with a blurred background and music swelling beneath soft lighting. I hit play. And there she was. Not Lena. Someone younger. Same lips. Same inflections. A slightly thinner nose. But the same surgically sculpted features. She blinked like me. Paused like me. Even touched her collarbone the way I did when I was nervous. But her eyes were different. Too wide. Too hungry. I lost everything, she said on screen. My voice, my name, my entire identity. But now? I'm reclaiming it. And I want to help others do the same. The video faded to a logo, The Real Morgan Project. I sat in silence. Lena wasn't the end. She was the prototype. This girl, whoever she was, had been groomed, coached, molded to step in after the trial. Trained not just to look like me, but to move like me. Breathe like me. Be me. A digital phoenix, rising from the ashes of Lena's conviction. I searched the domain's registry. Fake names. Proxy emails. No leads. But the press inquiries listed a contact number. I dialed it. A woman answered. Breezy, warm, media trained. Hi, this is Julia with the Real Morgan Project. How can I help you? I kept my voice level. Yes, I'm interested in booking Morgan Wallen for an event. I saw her on the Healing Voices podcast. Oh, wonderful, she chirped. Morgan is booked through mid-next month, but she's hosting a live Q&A this Saturday at the Havenwood Center in Boston. It's her first public appearance since her transformation. Would you like to attend? Definitely, I said. Put me on the list. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Havenwood. That was my city. My community center. She was planning to show up and claim my life on stage. And the worst part? No one would question it. Because Lena had blurred the lines so much, people no longer knew who the real Morgan Wallen was. But I had one advantage. I knew who she was. I sent the video to my forensic specialist. Compare facial motion vectors. Match expressions. Build a movement fingerprint, I typed. Tell me if she's been trained, and if Lena's movements match hers. He replied within minutes. Already checked. 92.3% match in gesture timing. This girl has been coached by Lena. Possibly remotely. Possibly through VR or recorded footage. Want me to pull more? Yes. Yes, I did. Because I was going to that event. And I wasn't just going to watch her speak. I was going to walk on stage, take the mic from her hand, and reclaim my voice in front of everyone. The Havenwood Center buzzed like a beehive when I arrived. Rows of smiling strangers. VIP tags. Folding chairs lined with pamphlets that read, the real Morgan, reclaiming identity after trauma. My name. My story. But someone else's face delivering it. I wore a hoodie, sunglasses, and sat near the back. Every few minutes, an event volunteer passed by, asking, "Are you excited to see her, or she's even more graceful in person?" I just nodded. Inside, I was boiling. The lights dimmed. A hush swept across the room. Then music began to play, soft, inspirational, fake. And she walked out. Not Lena. Morgan too. 0, she was maybe 24. Long brown hair curled just enough. A face too close to mine to be coincidence. She wore a white blazer like the one I used to wear on my lecture tours. And when she smiled, the crowd smiled back like they'd been programmed. "Hello," she said, voice trembling just right. "I'm Morgan Vallen." And for a long time, I wasn't allowed to speak. Applause. I stood. Quietly. Slipped past people. Moved toward the side of the stage. She continued. They tried to erase me. Silence me. Convince the world that I didn't belong in my own story. But healing is a revolution. And today, I'm here to reclaim my voice. Cheers. Phones up. Cameras flashing. I reached the side stairs. A volunteer looked up, startled. "Excuse me, ma'am, this area is restricted." "I am the restriction," I said, lifting my glasses. She blinked. Her jaw dropped. I stepped onto the stage. The room gasped. 2 Morgan Vallens now stood side by side, one polished and poised, the other in jeans, hoodie, and fury. Morgan too. 0 froze. Her eyes widened. I took the mic from her hand. "Let's make one thing very clear," I said. My voice didn't shake. It cut. My name is Morgan Vallen. I am 62 years old. And I never gave permission for my face, my voice, or my story to be used in this performance. A ripple of confusion. Gasps. I am the woman whose identity was stolen by Lena Winters. The woman who survived a year-long court battle to prove who I am. And this girl? I turned to her. This is the next phase of Lena's plan. A living mimic. Trained to steal not just my name, but your attention. Cameras flashed. People muttered. The girl, Morgan too. 0, finally spoke. I didn't mean harm. I was just trying to help people. I was told she didn't want the spotlight anymore. By who? I snapped. Lena Winters? The convicted fraud who taught you to move like me? Smile like me? Right in my voice? Silence. I turned to the crowd. I have forensic proof this woman was coached. Her movements match Lena Winters nearly 93%, down to blinking patterns. Her content was generated from stolen journals, deep-faked footage, and chopped-up recordings taken during my therapy sessions. This isn't advocacy. It's identity laundering. One man in the front row stood up. "Is this true?" he asked the girl. "Were you pretending?" She started to cry. "I didn't know how far it went," she whispered. She told me I could be a vessel. That Morgan didn't want to speak anymore. She said I could carry the story for her. I believed her. "Did you know I was alive?" I asked. She hesitated. "Yes," she said. "But she said you were tired. That you wanted to disappear." "No," I said. She wanted me to disappear. And she found someone desperate enough to help her do it. I handed the mic to the moderator. This woman is not at fault for what Lena did. But make no mistake, this story isn't hers. It's mine. And it always was. I walked off stage to thunderous silence. No cheers. No boos. Just truth. Later that night, as the story went viral, the girl sent me an email. Subject: I'm sorry. Message: I didn't know what I was becoming until I saw you stand there. I hope someday you'll forgive me. Avery, not Morgan. She included a file folder. Inside? All her training videos. The emails Lena had sent her. And one chilling message from 2 weeks before the verdict: if I lose, you speak for me. You become me. And one day? You'll thank me for giving you that power. The folder Avery sent was dense. Hundreds of files. Video sessions. Makeup tutorials. Voice modulation tools. Facial exercises. Even breathing drills designed to soften grief for stage delivery. Lena hadn't just created a mimic, she'd built a curriculum. But the deeper I went, the more I realized something strange. The technology used eye tracking, muscle mapping, adaptive learning AI. It wasn't Lena's style. It was far too sophisticated. Then I found it. A receipt. For $187,000. Paid to a private innovation lab called EchoFace Incorporated. The payer? Roland Parrish. A name I knew. A man I once rejected. Years ago, Roland was an early investor in my publishing startup. He'd funded the first print run of my memoir, Beneath the Silence. We'd had dinner once. He tried to blur the lines between business and romance. I politely declined. He pulled out days later. Told me I was too complicated to brand. Now he was back. Bankrolling my doppelgangers. I tracked him to a high-rise downtown. A glossy fortress with tinted glass and polished receptionists. I walked in. He was waiting in a leather chair, sipping espresso like he owned the sky. Well, he said, rising. The original walks in. I was beginning to wonder when you'd show up. I didn't sit. Why? I asked. Why help her? He smiled. Because Lena had what you didn't, Morgan. Hunger. You wanted to write about trauma. She wanted to market it. And I'm a businessman. I saw the potential in her. Obsession. Obsession? I snapped. She tried to erase me. And yet here you are, he said. Sharper than ever. Maybe that's what you needed. You gave her tools. Money. A platform. You let her rebuild me from the outside in. He leaned back. I gave her resources. What she did with them is unfortunate. I pulled out a folder. Dropped it on his desk. Inside were contracts. Pay stubs. Transfer logs. Proof he paid Avery under an alias. He glanced at them. Then said, "What do you want, Morgan?" I narrowed my eyes. You tell me. He slid a silver envelope across the table. Inside? A non-disclosure agreement. A 7-figure settlement offer. And a clause: all past, present, and future likeness claims related to Morgan Vallon identity shall be forfeited in exchange for complete removal of real Morgan branding and cessation of all mimic-based content. You can take the win, he said. Disappear. Live quiet. No more cameras. No more chaos. I shut it down, and you get your name back, with interest. I stared at him. This was blood money. Silence money. He didn't want justice. He wanted the scandal to die. Why now? I asked. Why not let it burn? Because you're gaining sympathy, he said flatly. You're not the villain Lena made you out to be. You're becoming uncontrollable. Uncontrollable. That word sat heavy. I stood. I don't want your money, I said. I want your face on the record. Tied to this. And I want you to watch as I rebuild, not in the shadows, but in the open. I turned to leave. He called after me. You'll regret this. You could have had it all. I didn't look back. Because I already did have it all. I had the truth. I had my name. And now? I had the receipts. I didn't wait. The day after my meeting with Roland Parrish, I uploaded everything. The mimic training videos. The fake scripts. The deepfake confessions. The payment trails from Roland. And a side-by-side comparison of every woman Lena had shaped into me. I called the exposé, The Face Thieves, How One Woman Tried to Become Me, and Trained Others to Do It. It broke the internet. Major outlets picked it up within hours. The real Morgan Vallen speaks out. Influencers trained to impersonate victim in multimillion-dollar identity scam. She didn't just copy me, she fractured me, a survivor's fight to be seen. People finally saw the depth of it. The long game. The grooming. The gaslighting. The fact that Lena had manufactured an entire ecosystem around erasing me. Messages poured in. Victims of similar identity crimes. Women who'd been silenced by men like Roland. Even therapists who now recognized the signs in their own patients. I went on morning shows. Podcasts. I became the face of digital boundary violations. Ironically, the more people saw me, the more I felt real again. But then came the message. From an untraceable prison email system. No sender. Just a number. And a voice file. I played it alone. The audio was clear. It was her. Lena. Her voice was slower now. Calmer. Almost hypnotic. You won, didn't you, Morgan? You told the truth. You destroyed the echoes. You buried the shadows. But you forgot something. I leaned closer. My hands clenched. I never wanted to be you. I wanted to replace you. And for a while. I did. You know that's true. You know you looked in the mirror once and weren't sure who was looking back. That part of you? It's mine now. They may know your name, but I know your rhythm. Your fears. Your insecurities. You were always one heartbreak away from breaking. There was a pause. And then, so enjoy the spotlight. Until the next one walks in wearing your shoes. There's always someone willing to become what you leave behind. Click. Silence. No threats. No pleas. Just poison disguised as peace. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because that night, I lit a candle in my home office. Sat beside my original journal. And for the first time in years, I wrote a new entry. She didn't steal me. She extracted the parts one had forgotten were valuable. She forced me to fight for them. And in doing so, I became something she could never replicate. Whole. Because next, I return to where it all began, and meet the one person who changed the story completely. Not Lena. Not Roland. Not Avery. But someone I least expected, who gives me closure I didn't know I needed, and a chance to forgive. Want to end this journey with me? Before I finish this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to fight to be believed? Not just by strangers. But by your own friends. Your own husband. The system. Even your own reflection? That's what this was about. Not just Lena. Not just Roland. Not the girl she trained or the shadows she cast. But me. Proving to myself that I was worth defending, even when the world wasn't sure I was real. It's been 5 months since I exposed everything. Lena's serving an extended sentence now, with added years for digital fraud and conspiracy. Her accomplices have all been charged. Roland Parrish's empire is crumbling. His name now appears in ethics lectures as a case study in exploitation. And Avery, the girl who stood on stage pretending to be me, has disappeared from the spotlight. She's enrolled in a quiet college program out west. She sends me postcards sometimes. No return address. Just simple notes, I still hear your voice when I speak. I'm learning how to find mine now. I respect that. But this isn't about her either. This ending? It's about someone I never thought I'd hear from again. Ethan. He called last week. I saw your keynote, he said. The one about digital resilience. I waited. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I should have known. I should have stood up for you. I didn't believe in you because I didn't know how to believe in myself. But I see it now. I see you. There was a long pause. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. Good. Because I didn't give it to him. But I did say this, you didn't destroy me, Ethan. But you did delay me. So from now on, if you want to be part of my life, you walk beside me. Not ahead. Not behind. And never again in the dark. He said he understood. Maybe he does. Maybe he never will. Either way, I no longer need his validation. Because I have my own reflection now. The other day, I caught myself in the mirror. No second guessing. No fear that someone else was blinking with my face. Just me. Scar behind the left ear. Slight wrinkle near the corner of my right eye. Smile not always perfect, but earned. I'm speaking at a Women's Resilience Summit next month. And this time? There's no stage double. No prosthetic scar. No second Morgan. Just me. The real one. And if you're watching this on my channel now, if you've made it to the end of this story, then here's what I want to say to you: never let anyone redefine who you are. Not through lies. Not through silence. And especially not through imitation. Because the only person who gets to live your life is you. This was my story. If it resonated with you, I'd love to hear where you're from and how you've reclaimed your voice. And if you'd like to hear more real, raw, and twisted truths like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time, don't trust the mirror until you know who's behind it. Morgan Vallen.